I'm going to talk today about the new action tags, the calc text and the calc date here at the top. So before these action tags were created, if you wanted to have a date difference, you'd have to do like a date difference calculated field. And the problem with a calculated field is that the output can only be a number. So you could only say, if I had this date, date A, and date B, I could get the difference between those dates, however many days or months or weeks are between those dates. But I couldn't get a date and say, give me the date that's going to be 30 days after that date. And that's what the calc date does now. So you can see here that what it does is you would add the @calc date action tag, and then within that you're putting in the field that is going to be the base date, and then you have to tell it how many, whatever you want, days, days, months, years, and you would specify what increment you're looking for. And to know that what increment it is, if you look in the let me see, if we go to, if you go into a calculated field here, there's a link that says how do I format the equation. That's where you can find them. So if we scroll down here for the date diff example, these are the values that you can have. You can either have year, month, day, hours, minutes, seconds. And the only one you have to really know is that for months, it's a capital M, because if you don't have a capital M, it's minutes. But the rest are kind of obvious as to what they are. So you would say if you wanted 7 days past the visit date, you would say you'd have the visit date in here, and then you would say 7 and then days. So let me show you an example of that. So I created a demo project that we can go through. It has a registration date here, and then I will add the action tags for 1 week follow-up, 30-day follow-up, 1 month follow-up, 6 month follow-up, and a year follow-up, just to give you guys an idea, the things that you can do with this action tag. So like I said, you would have @calc date, and then within parentheses, you're going to add your field. Mine is called date registered, and it's got to be in square brackets. And then this is going to be a week follow-up, so I will have 7 days and 7 and then days. And let me just copy this, that way I don't have to type it in for everything. So if we go to this example here and I load it, if I click today, then my week follow-up will be on the 12th. Now, if I want to do 30 days, I would just change this to 30. This would be similar to like a month follow-up, but the problem with that is a month either has 29, 30, or 31 days, or 28 days. So if you wanted a month, you would come in here and you would change this to 1, and then a capital M for month. And then if we wanted 6 months, we would do the same thing, but we'd change this to 6. And if we wanted a year follow-up, we would change this to a Y for a year. So now if we go back to this record and we reload, if I say today, then a week from now would be the 12th. 30 days from now would be the 5th, because November only has 30 days. If November had 31 days, then this would be the 4th, and then a month follow-up would be the 5th. 6 months from now would be Cinco de Mayo, and then a year from now would be November 5th, 2021. So you can do this with date and time. It doesn't just have to be a date. So if we go back to this, and this field type here is a date time field type. And you can see here that it has, instead of just the calendar here, it has a calendar and a clock that allows you to put in a date and a time. And if we wanted to add a time, so like let's say that we wanted a timer, something that's 60 minutes from the time that you started. So my field here is called start date time. So I have this calc date, I have start date time, I have 60, and then I have lowercase m, which is minutes. Now the interesting thing is this only works for date fields or date time fields. This doesn't work for time fields, and I'll show you what I mean. So I have another set of fields here called start time and end time, and if I come in here and I add start time and it's 60 minutes, it's the same formula, it just has start time instead of start date time. But I have the validation here as just time. So we'll save that and we'll go back to here. And if I have the start date time is now, you can see here that I have 60 minutes. So right here is 13:48. The end time would be 14:48. But if I click now here, it's 13:49, but nothing pops up for the end time. So if you want to do hours, minutes, and seconds, you would have to use a date time field type. And if you wanted to use seconds, you'd have to make sure that your date time had seconds in it. So right now I just have date time with minutes. But if you were interested in seconds, you would have to make sure that you had seconds here and that you had seconds here. And then if we did, let's say 600 seconds, which should be 10 minutes. So you can see here now it's 10 minutes. If you don't have the seconds, you won't output because it's not capturing the seconds value here, so it's not going to output there. The other action tag is calc text. And what's nice about calc text is that when you have like I said earlier, when you have a calculated variable or a calculation field, you can only output numbers. And so if you wanted to output text based on the value of a calculation, you weren't able to do that. But now you can with this calc text. And basically what the calc text does is it provides you with an if statement, a nested if statement here within the calc text. So if I have a date of birth field and I have a calculated field here for age, and I just want to say whether this person is a child or an adult, right? Because I could look at the age and say, okay, well, this is 18, they're an adult, if it's under 18, that kind of thing. But if I wanted to say specifically whether they're a child or an adult, I would say, I would have calc text, and then within the parentheses for calc text, I have an if statement that says if, in parentheses, age, which is my field, less than 18. And the way these if statements are is you have the statement, the condition that you're asking about. And then you have whether or not it's true, what value you want to output if it's true, and then what value you want to output if it's false. So here I have my statement. Here's my statement, age is less than 18. If it's true, I want to output child. If it's false, I want to output adult. So if we save that, and I say today, I was born today, my age is 0, I'm a child. If I was born in 2000, I'm 20, I'm an adult. One of the problems though is if I don't have any value here, it's 0, it's saying I'm an adult. because we only have these two conditions. If I'm asking if age is less than 18, I want it, it's going to mark it as a child. If it's greater than 18, or 18 or greater, then it's going to be an adult. The problem is when it's blank, this doesn't evaluate to anything. So you can have a nested if statement here. So I would say if age greater than or equal to 18, then I want this to be adult. And then I have, because what's happening is this second phrase here is going to be all in the false. Because if it's true, I'm just going to output child. But if not, I'm going to evaluate the rest of this. So this is all in the false. But now I have to have a false within this nested if statement, and I'm just going to put that as blank. And then I have to have another parentheses because I have a nested if statement. So I'm saying if they're under 18, I want them to be child. If they're 18 and over, I want them to be adult. But if neither one of those conditions are true, I want it to be blank. So if I say today, it's child. If I say it's 20 years ago, I'm an adult. If I delete this, now it goes away. And another quick example here is this gender. So if you have gender, and I have 4 genders here, if I add these in here, this is a set of nested if statements. I'm saying if gender equals 1, I want to output male. If gender equals 2, I want to output female. If gender equals 3, non-binary. If gender equals 4, other. And then still here is if none of these conditions match, then I don't want to output anything. So if I refresh this, if I click on this, it's male, female, non-binary, other, and if I reset, it goes away. So this is a way, you have these values here, so male, it's not like you necessarily need to say male, but if you have other conditions like we have here for child and adult, this is a way for you to use calculated fields to output text. And it's more complicated. You can get as complicated as you want because it's essentially a calculation field within parentheses. So you could do multiplications with piping for other fields. So you can bring in other field values for that. You can also use smart variables. So there's a lot more that you can do here. And I would suggest just reading this here. And to find these action tags, whenever you go into a field, you have these action tags here. So if you click on that, that's the window I'm looking at here. It has the information about the action tags. You can also find it if you click on the project setup, and you'll see here these 4 buttons. You can click on the action tags there. And if you want to know more about smart variables, you can click on here. So this shows you what kind of smart variables you can use. If you want a certain value from a certain arm or a certain instrument or a certain instance, you would use you would combine the smart variable with a field label to get that specific value. And so you can build these action tags out and be as complicated as you want. But the important thing is that it allows you to use calculated fields to output text or dates. And that's really the 2 things you want. You're either wanting to you want to calculate a date in the future, and you want to know what that date is, or based on some criteria using nested if statements or just, generic if statements, you want to be able to say, if this value equals this, I want to output these strings of text, or I want to output these field values, or do some other calculations based on that and output that as text. Does anybody have any questions? So for the second and third parameters, can the variables rather than a fixed number and letter? Is that for the The Gil, is that for the calc date? Okay, so I answered your question.
Yeah, I think you answered the question.
Okay. Does anybody else have any questions? I know I kind of had to rush through this. We were running out of time, but I wanted to make sure I got everything for you guys. I think these are really cool because we've been having to try to find creative ways of doing this sort of thing, of piping in text based on calculated fields. So Gil asks, is guessing this is a good way to extract a date from a date time? Yeah, I guess you could do that. I'm not sure if you could use this to format a date to a date time, but you might be able to. So let me, I think I know what you're talking about here. Let me do that real quick. So like if you had a start date, you had a date time, and you make this 0, and I guess it doesn't matter, 0 days. And you're saying if you change this to a date.
Yeah, I think that's what he's saying.
And then yeah, so there you go.
That's awesome. Nicely done. It's really nice when you get a chance to see these demonstrating in a project like this. And, you know, it'd be nice if you could post this somewhere on the website or whatever, maybe, so people have questions, one of the more of those things, especially since we're going to put this up, since it's we recorded it. So
yeah.
Anyway, for those of you who aren't aware, cd2.arizona.edu, we have videos there, and we cut these sessions up and post them, so you'll be able to get online and find something about these action tags in particular, and you can watch the video if you want any more feedback about that. So, perfect. He's got the link up there. He's showing you what it looks like. So we're at the 2 o'clock hour. Thank you all for attending. I hope it's been helpful, and we'll come up with some new things for you next week for those of you who want to attend. So, have a great rest of the day and a nice weekend, and we'll see you next week. Bye now.